Hi, my name is Jason, and for my game analysis project I chose to play Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, developed by Starbreeze Studios and released by 505 Games in 2013. Now, Starbreeze as a company has had some ups and downs over the course of its 24-year history, but it was responsible for the critically acclaimed The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay, as well as finding their most profitable success in Payday 2. However, going all the way back to 2010, the company seemed to be experiencing some form of identity crisis, and after a shake-up from the top down, they settled upon Brothers as their first original IP title under the new leadership, as well as a new game engine, Unreal Engine 3. Now, I remember playing this game way back when I was just starting to download games over the PlayStation Network, and I think I picked this game for my analysis project for a couple of different reasons. One, because I figured it'd be a little less intimidating to analyze as my first video game essay. Two, it has some really amazing visuals and gameplay mechanics. And three, being that stories are usually my favorite aspect of games that I consider great, this one does something entirely original that I still think about from time to time when the actual value of narratives are measured against other elements like character development and emergent gameplay potential and meaningful choices. Being rather bare bones in terms of player agency, this game makes up for it with a very strong sense of unity when it comes to the story the designers wanted to tell. In attempting to describe the core game design elements of Brothers, we've got a top-down, isometric, 3D puzzle platformer in the fantasy genre, where the player must control two brothers simultaneously through a gorgeous countryside of mountains, cliffs, forests, rivers, and settlements scarcely populated by humans and magical creatures. Essentially, it's a quest that restricts players to a totally linear story path that cannot be strayed from. The two brothers mostly walk, pick up, jump, carry, climb, and activate tools or mechanical items. Oh, and sometimes they could just sit and enjoy the view. The goals? Try not to get killed as you solve puzzles along the way to finding some medicine for your sick father. It's fairly straightforward, which leaves more time to take in the world-building design put in. Straying from the literal path will not net the player any prizes, shortcuts, or side quests, so you learn very quickly to just stay on the main road to get to your next puzzle challenge. Now, in terms of the game's story structure, I think Jesse Schell's graphic in his A Book of Lenses illustrates it best, although if I can combine his with Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler's Hero's Journey, I think we'd have something approximating this kind of design. Or even this one, to be a little more illustrative. Players interact with the game by controlling the third-person avatar brothers with a single controller. I captured this footage from a run-in on my PlayStation, so I wouldn't know how to play it without the dual analog sticks found on these types of controllers. But here's the total amount of tutorial the designers provide. And I want to say teamwork is a key gameplay element here, but as there's no option for even a second player, it's really just your coordination and operating two characters at once that's the key to progressing through the game. For instance, one of the first areas of interaction finds me trying to both solve a puzzle, in this case getting them both up to the higher level, and operating a machine, here it's a hand crank, using both characters, which generally entails just pushing a trigger button or rotating the analog stick while holding that button. And that's it. You really can't fall off cliffs until you're hanging on the ledges, so you really just focus on traveling and solving. But since it was like 8 or 9 years since the last time I played, it was fun to solve all these challenges again, even when some of my screw-ups in hand and eye coordination meant plummeting to my death. Multiple times, that is. But respawns are relatively close by, probably second to any number of LEGO games. Okay, so about feedback. Everybody speaks in some sort of primitive, if not completely nonsensical language. And what I kept forgetting throughout was that essential NPCs will interact with you only if you're addressing them with the correct brother. And I still don't know if there's any method to this madness, but basically some folks will help them out if the little brother speaks to them, and some only if the older brother does. Why I kept forgetting this, I honestly don't know, but at least a collected half an hour was probably spent trying to find something to activate, or even backtracking in order to see if I forgot to lug something along. Okay, so here's a sequence that I think serves to show off some of the game mechanics, as well as the dynamic camera, as it tries to keep up with two characters within an enclosed space. So here we have a mechanism ahead of us, and I'm using the left and right analog sticks. And I guess the easy part is actually lining these guys up to operate the mechanism. So let's see, we're going to push the mechanism forward, and that in turn is going to start the hanging conveyor system. And then, bear in mind that I frequently forget which is left and which is right. And then you have to hold the L trigger or right trigger to grab onto it. So I got the little brother grabbing onto it, and now I've got to get the big brother following on the next one. Meanwhile, the camera tries to keep up with both of them as they try to traverse this cavern system. And down below, I guess, are trolls working. So there's some, really nice art direction going on here. And so on the bottom right, you see the little brother, and I just have to let him go. But see, here's the trick. If I let the wrong trigger go, I let the wrong brother go, and I plummet to my death. So then, luckily, again, illustrate another point, the respawning is fairly generous. So, just have to push the mechanism again and get this going again. And we're going to try one more time without obviously falling to our death. So I got him, look at him, I'm acting all cocky now. And now the camera moves in a different way, which is kind of odd. But not a big deal, because I think by the time it curves me around there, I'll be on the platform pretty safe. So now, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, let go of the left trigger so the brother could drop, and then the right trigger is the little brother, and then we move on. I guess sometimes I'm testing the limits just to see if I can go on to the next platform and cheat, but no, there's a stopper right there. So here we go. Got the big brother says, hey, come on, little brother, get on up there, because it can't go the other way. So little brother's got to go. I got to make sure the big brother stays where he is. Little brother's going to operate the crank right now. And that's basically holding the trigger and using the analog stick in a circular way. And that way, what does that do in here? Oh, that opens up the block. And now I've got to go get the big brother and get him to get back on the chain to get to the next platform. And like I said, this is a typical sequence where you alternate between left and right. Usually you don't have to do really heavily timed stuff. With both of them at the same time, you can kind of, let your brain do half of the work. But sometimes you do have to use them both, but it's not too hard. So here I grab the chain again, and then as he's holding on and I'm holding the left trigger, I'm operating the right brother, and they jump across just by holding the trigger as you run across. And you see here's the camera trying to follow along with both of them and do his thing. I'm not really sure what to do at this point, and I think, okay, I'm just going to grab it, and maybe the big brother is going to do something next. And he does by activating that lever, which brings the little brother down to the other platform. Always making sure I try not to let go of the trigger prematurely or the wrong one. Get him going. That's going to do something. Oh, I guess that gets the chain going. And so the big brother, look, he's kicking the side. Just because I guess he's a little bored. Excuse me. Anyway, so he grabs the chain. Or he waits for the next one, because he just wasn't sure about that one. Okay, his crank opens up the stopper, and so Big Brother is waiting forever for the next one. Oh, I think it was a matter of positioning. A little hard to tell whether it was on the outside of the platform or the inside. So here we go. Little Brother's working the crank. Big Brother's going through the stopper, and before you know it, I'm going to make it my way all the way across, or I'm just going to let go and die. In any event, that's pretty much the game mechanics and some of the camera direction. It's pretty intuitive because there's only 3 different kinds of controls going on there. However, the real trick is splitting your brain for 2 different actions going on at the same time. As touched upon earlier, I think Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons is basically the hero's journey, particularly for the younger brother, who is clearly the most dynamic character of the two. He's got some trauma he needs to get past, and this adventure takes him and his older brother through mystic areas across the land, from the lush seaside hills of their home, to the monotone underground caverns, from dark graveyards surrounded by hungry wolves, to icy lands, seemingly worlds away. The main themes for the game run parallel to the game's very goals. Leave the comforts and safety of home, find your courage, and save the ones you love. On a personal level, however, I think the game teaches me how to split my brain into 2, having to do many tasks by moving and interacting with each character separately on screen. In fact, that's the primary game design feature. This requirement to get through puzzles and obstacles either together or not at all. If I had to choose one term to sum up my experience playing this game, I'd probably say it was comfortable. It's a comfortable game. Even though there was a language barrier between what the characters in this world spoke and anyone's own native language, rest assured that it's basically a dialogue-free game, and that it's more about pantomime and intuition than anything else. There's no customization beyond some audio and video preferences, but I often find these kinds of games extremely liberating, at least when the narrative is strong enough. Obviously, this is skewed towards the side of a design narrative, but the lack of player agency means more attention can be placed on other elements like the art and level design, or the gameplay mechanics, and of course the story, all of which I found stunning as well as engrossing. And while no real player decisions presented besides proceeding might seem like there are no meaningful choices to be found, this doesn't mean there isn't any meaning itself that one could glean from this game. The story they wanted to tell deals with death from a child's point of view in a serious and respectful way. And given other fantasies in films like A Monster Calls and Bridge to Terabithia, fears and dangers presented as external conflicts within these genres are often simply manifestations of the inner conflicts taking place within our protagonists. So even though the game offers none of what Narian would classify as player choices, just going forward, as these two brothers do, in the face of simply other things to do with one's time, or even other games for that matter, means we might just be rewarded with what critics describe as games that provide players with agency are hot right now. Sure, player customization, narrative control, sometimes complete abandonment of the storyline. These affordances are granted by developers to provide a rewarding, emotional, interactive experience. Well, I'd argue that Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, a fantasy game with no understandable dialogue, relying exclusively on a design narrative story model, a unique controller interface coordination curve, and challenging puzzles set against breathtaking backdrops can provide just as rich an emotional experience as all those heavy hitters, simply because what this game does, it happens to do exceptionally well. Thanks for watching this video analysis, and I'd invite everyone to download and play Brothers before it's gone forever, which would be a real loss to gaming fans around the world.